Literally that. I mean, there's a few elements. I mean, the main thing was that Ian had died a couple of months before, and it was part of their process of getting over that and not just sort of stopping. So, but they couldn't really go into a studio in Manchester because obviously, people would have phoned up and people would, Enemy and all that. But they could come to us because we were mates and we weren't a commercial studio. So there was that. But also Bernard was very much at that time, and Ian as well, before he died, was very much into electronic music, and what we were doing was the direction, that they wanted to go in. So that was, it was considered in that sense in terms of what we were doing, that it kind of fitted what they wanted to do. But really, it was in large part because they could come and they could play and do some recordings without really fear of anything coming back. And so we were friends and they trusted us, and that was it, wasn't it? Really, I think, Chris.
Yeah, totally.
And one thing I wanted to ask, obviously you. In 78, you put out your debut record with Rough Trade, and obviously you're on the debut Factory Sampler and stuff as well. But I remember when I interviewed Richard years ago, he spoke about in the period leading up to that, how he'd send tape after tape to various record labels, and he'd get letters back, and the key word on all of those letters would be like "unfortunately" or "we regret to inform." And he'd said, and I don't know if this chimes with your memories and stuff, that he was so sort of desperate to try and find a way to fund music because there was just so little in the way of, there was no equivalent of Tony Wilson in Sheffield, there was no Zoo Records, none of that, no Bob Last, etc. That he was considering borrowing money from local gangsters to put out, the debut Crabs record. Do you recall that period before you started doing stuff with Rough Trade and whatnot as being particularly difficult, and just that people didn't quite grasp what you were doing yet? What do you recall of that period before people sort of really started to get what you were doing?
We did know gangsters, but we didn't get any money off them. I think, I don't know. It's funny actually. I think what we realised was that we couldn't get, probably there was never going to be a record label that was going to bring it out that moment in time. But what was happening and what was part of that period was journalists were kind of recognising the change in what was going on. So that was the thing that we did, was to then target, to send things to John Savage being important, we chatted about before. Yeah. So it was a way of actually getting the ear of someone. We realised that sending tape, after a while we realised, we'd only done a few gigs, so if you're sending tapes to Virgin or whatever, they're not going to really respond. But if we can get to journalists, then it might be a way of doing it. So I think that was the way. And it was at that point, there were things bubbling up. I mean, Richard Boone at New Hormones was probably the key in that sense. We sent it to Richard Boone, and that's why we ended up doing our first London shows with the Buzzcocks, wasn't it? Remember that? Yeah. Eric's here. I met Eric that night. We all met Eric.
That was another spicy evening, though, right? I mean,
well, for us it wasn't too bad because we came on first. Although I do remember doing that first gig. We turned up and kind of dumped our stuff on the Lyceum stage, and they were like, we had no idea about DI boxes or anything like that. We were like, all right, where do we plug in? And they're going, what do you mean where do you plug in? You've got a fucking cassette machine, you've got no amps, you've got there's no amplification. And they were really good, the people, because they did manage to get a sound out, and it was probably quite appalling what we heard, but we were all right. We got stuff, but because John Cooper Clark, he had an iron bar thrown at him that night, so it was quite heavy.
Because it was like Slits, Buzzcocks, Cooper Clark and you guys, right?
Yeah,
was that the bill? Yeah.
Proper gig.
Yeah, what a night out.
yeah.
All right, look, we're really tight on time, and I know we've probably got loads of big fans in the audience, so I want to open it up to you guys. But very quickly before I take a question, just out of curiosity, given that